Hi, I'm Ian Twombly with AOPA Media, and today we're going to take that emergency landing all the way to the ground.
AOPA keeps flying safe, accessible, and fun by protecting your freedom to fly. We are the most trusted one-stop resource for all things related to general aviation. Become an AOPA pilot today.
So, most pilots don't see this until their commercial training. That's the 180-degree power-off approach and landing. We're going to do them today. They're a lot of fun. They really work those skills for estimating runway distance, glide performance of the airplane, and of course, emergency preparedness. Now, all the time we're doing those emergency approaches where we circle over a field, but we never bring it to a landing. And today we're gonna do that. We're gonna bring it to a landing. They're lots of fun. We're gonna try all sorts of different variations.
180-degree power-off approach and landings are so much fun, and you're constantly making all kinds of little adjustments. And it's really an advanced maneuver, but it's something that's good to try early on. And you can take this to different levels. You can start just by almost doing a normal pattern with normal configurations, moving up to adding in flaps earlier to slips with flaps, which is a really more advanced thing to do. But the setup is pretty easy. You just get into that key position, the key position being a beam, your touchdown point. So you've circled down, you know, we assume you've circled down without power. You're a beam, your touchdown point at pattern altitude. Make it look as normal as you remember from any other landing. And then we're just going to continue that approach. So we're going to try it here at altitude first. And one of the things that you want to do, I think in any airplane, is you get an idea of what different configurations do for your descent rate. So we're going to do just power off first, then we're going to do power off with some slips to see what that does to our descent rate so that we know what tools are in our toolbox when we get closer to the ground. So Cessna 172 here, we're just going to do carb heat, power all the way off because of course we don't have an engine. And you don't have to worry about pitching for best glide or anything else. This is we're trying to replicate a normal approach as best as possible. So we're going to come down kind of a normal approach speed as if you were a beam, so maybe 80, something like that, and we look at the VSI, and we see that we're getting about 800 feet a minute. That's good. I'm going to speed it up a little bit, let the nose come down, see what happens to our descent rate. Obviously our speed's going to climb, but we're going to go down to about 1,200 feet a minute, and then we're going to see when we pitch up. We're going to get slower. We don't want to get too slow, lose all our energy. So at about 75, we only got about 200 or 300 feet a minute. So that's without power. Now let's add some flaps. We'll go full flaps. Let that nose come down to maybe 70. And we see we've only got about 700 feet a minute, maybe 800 feet a minute descent. We bring that nose up a little bit to about 60. That should lessen the descent even more. And now we're going to throw in a slip and see what happens. So we want to make sure our nose is down. We're going to enter that slip with rudder and aileron, opposite aileron. See, now we're coming down at like 1,400 feet a minute. So that tells us flaps and slipping is our biggest descent possibility, and that's going to come in crucial when we get back up onto the approach. So closer to the ground here, 180-degree power-off approach and landings. It's a little more complicated, obviously. So we want to get ourselves set in that normal position. Same distance from the runway you always are, same pattern altitude you always are. Try and make it repeatable, that sight picture in your mind. And then we're going to a beam or touchdown point, which today is going to be the 1,000 feet markers. And we're going to go RP on, power all the way off. And I usually like to give it a second or two. Some people turn in right away. You can do that. Kind of depends on the airplane, and the 172 has a pretty good glide ratio. But the first thing we're going to do after we make our turn is we're going to hit an aiming point. So I'm going to actually aim a couple stripes short of that 1,000-foot marker. And I'm just going to keep it in my field of view, constantly adjusting bank to make sure that it doesn't go up or down in the windscreen. If it goes down in the windscreen, I'm too high. If it goes up in the windscreen, I'm too low, and I need to turn in more. I'm actually looking pretty good right now with no aids. So this is just a normal approach at this point, just without power. So we don't have flaps, we're not slipping. And as I come around, we make those final adjustments. I see I'm getting a little high. I'm going to add some flaps. Now I feel very high. I'm
We're still traffic, 010, turn final.
All right, we're going to ride this in and see what happens. There's not much you can do to adjust now except a little bit of a slip, but I actually think we're going to settle just fine because I'm on speed, which means I won't float too much. The other thing here is important not to push it. Continue that flare, and that's it. So we landed in those 1,000-foot markers. That'd be a success. All right, we're going to try that again. And this time we're going to do a little more advanced. So we're going to add flaps sooner. And I'm going to simulate that by basically thinking I've turned in too early. So I'm going to beam the 1,000-foot markers. And this is as you start to get a little more advanced. We got power all the way off. And let's say I turn in right away. I don't know yet if I'm going to be too high because I can still kind of adjust. But once I'm on base, I can see that I have made a mistake and I'm way too high and I'm going to overshoot. So I'm going to dump all the flaps right now. I'm going to square off my turn to give myself more ground distance. The important part here is not to overshoot so much that you come back around with rudder. That's a dangerous situation, obviously. And I can see this has really helped my descent rate. So I'm actually looking pretty good. My aiming point is coming up in the windshield a little bit. That's good, back to where it should be. It's a steep approach, which is a little unusual, but I think it'll work out just fine. And one thing, I think at least, is that it's better to land long on these than it is short. If you land short, you're coming in with a lot of energy hitting hard. If you land long, okay, maybe you go off the end, but that's a lot better. I'd rather go off the end at 20 than short at 70. Okay, so we hold it off, let it float. Okay, we did overshoot just a little, but that's okay. That's why we practice. So this time we're going to go with the most advanced technique you can do, and that's a slipping turn. So I would only recommend doing this if you're supremely confident in your airplane and you've practiced this at altitude. It's important, obviously, to keep the nose down, to keep your speed up, because we're going to be cross-controlled. But this is an emergency situation again, so you want to be able to use every tool you possibly can to hit that spot. I know during emergencies that we check, you know, the mags and the fuel and everything else, but this is really just to demonstrate the flying portion of it. So we're beam our touchdown point, those 1,000-foot markers. We're going to go power all the way off. And I'm going to turn in right away. I think my airplane's going to drop like a stone, so I turn in, and I can see, uh-oh, this is bad. I'm already way too high. So I'm going to go full flaps, and I'm going to start to slip it immediately. And we know that's going to give us a lot of altitude loss without a lot of speed gain. I can also bring out some of that turn, but keep that slip in there. So I've got that full rudder deflection. Got my nose down with my speed up. Okay, now we're coming to a better altitude. I'm making that low, late turn. Still a little bit of a slip in, not too much. I can see I'm a tiny bit high. Here we go. Now we can take it out and ride that down. Okay, so we've touched down with a minimum airspeed, just a little bit past our aiming point, and if we had to land in a field, I'd say that's a successful landing. So with these 180-degree power-off approach and landings, I would first work with an instructor, work at altitude, make sure you're completely comfortable in the airplane doing slips and different configuration changes. And then, yeah, bring it down to the ground and practice it until you can nail that spot within, 50 feet, because that's a real emergency situation. And again, some people, they like to do it kind of mathematically based. They think, okay, this is the wind. I know exactly how many seconds it's going to be until I turn. To me, it's a feel maneuver. You have to get out there. You have to try it.